So what we saw in the 2020 election was our worst fears and our highest hopes come to light. So one of the worst fears was that we would really be in the middle of a racial uprising. It's in places like Georgia that we still see semblance of the Klan. We still see people walking down the street with guns. This is an open carry state. So to see men in pickup trucks banishing their guns while we're on the way to take people to vote is very intimidating for the voters. However, what we saw was what I call nothing less than Black joy and brown joy, because people resisted, and they resisted by making sure that they voted anyway. So no matter what the obstacles were, whether they were changing the voting locations, whether they were closing polls, whether they're now making it against the law to give out water at a polling place after they have people stand in line for 7 hours and they know there aren't enough machines, you realize that this is not 1965. That you're really living in 2020 and 2022, and this is still happening. But at the same time, today we celebrate that there's a Black woman that is going to be on the Supreme Court. Today we celebrate that Georgia has a Black senator and its first Jewish senator. Today we celebrate that there's a Black woman that's running for governor. And what I can say is the resistance of what I call Mrs. Jackson and Mrs. Johnson that really did the hard work, that they registered people to vote, that they knocked on doors, that they called people, that they told their family and drugged their people to the polls to make sure that they were a part of history. That we as an organization, as a part of multiple coalitions, just happen to be the facilitators for some of that. But it's really the story, the success rests with the people. But one of the things that has always been central to the work that we do is we bookend our work by organizing around people that are already organizing. So it's that Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Jackson, Mrs. Harris that are already at their kitchen table, already calling people to their living room, talking about the street light or talking about the city council member needs to do this and so. We take those leaders that are raw, honest, good leaders from the get-go, and we try to make them stronger. So we become the gas station or the restaurant, right? So to give them other skills, to teach them how the policy works and how policy making works, and what meeting you really should go to get your point across, and how you really need to go to Washington and talk to your Congress people, and how you really need to go down to the Capitol and talk to those folks, and not just your city council member. So we try to make sure that we're a comprehensive organization, but we can't do this work alone. We work a lot with coalitions. So whether it's transit equity and transit justice, or affordable housing, or voter suppression, or voting rights, all of us are working in coalition, and sometimes multiple coalitions on coalition. Usually, and I have to say, it's usually Black and brown women who are leading these coalitions and leading these organizations with very little resources. So what we're learning from each other is we're stronger together. We're leaning into our strengths. So organizing, strategizing, mobilizing, working together, and supporting each other is all a part of what we do. And so we know that this is a generational movement that's happening. This is a continuation of the same movement from the 60s, from the 80s, from the 2000s, and it will continue on, because that fire, that light, that same light that we all come in this world with, we have to keep passing it on. And so that's part of what we do. And I'm so glad this congregation has been blessed to be able to help groups like ours to really do the work that we do. So those postcards actually do help. They remind people that it's time to register to vote. And as I was telling someone else, when they see a handwritten card on pretty stationery and a nice card, people open that first. And so that you cared enough to send cards from New York people hold those very dear. I mean, I've gone to organizing meetings and they're on people's refrigerators still, saying, look what somebody did. And so I think those little moments of inspiration really does help. And sometimes you think in a place like Georgia, does anyone see this? Does anyone really see what's happening here? And you all reminded us that you all do see us. Sometimes, you know, it's not just giving and sharing, but it's also not getting in the way of progress, not getting in the way of the work that's on the ground, not being over prescriptive of, well, you should do it this way, and this is the matrix. It is, we believe in you as a leader. We believe in the work that you've done. We can see the results. What do you need? Here you go. How can we help? That's helpful, and we appreciate it.
So New York State is one of the few states where you have to register in advance to be able to vote. And for the communities that we work in, particularly low-income communities of color, that's not always known. So when we're talking to people about, oh, did you go and vote? Don't forget to vote. Oh, I'm not registered, right? For all the different reasons. And then we have to tell them, oh, the deadline to register passed. So you can't vote in this election, which was an election that they wanted to vote in. Right, so there was a ballot initiative to make that end, and unfortunately, that initiative didn't pass. There weren't enough votes for that. So if you need an absentee ballot in New York, you have to, one, clearly you have to apply for a ballot, and then you have to check off boxes of reasons why you need an absentee ballot. And it could be from, I'm going to be outside of the place where I vote, right? So I'm going to be at work, or I'm going to be out of town, or I have a disability, what have you. If you don't remember to apply for a ballot, check that off, get the ballot, you're not able to vote. And so again, the question was on the ballot to ask people to vote for that, so you can remove that barrier. Those two asks were not voted on. Those failed. So, we started to see some pushback against them, that at least in New York City in particular, where the city council finally passed non-citizen voting. So if you have a green card in New York City, at least, you will be able to vote in city elections. That's huge. So that just starts to speak to people getting engaged. So while there are definitely some challenges, some barriers there's some bright spots, because definitely on the policy side, we're definitely seeing this play out more when we're pushing for housing policy, right? Where these ongoing fights around, when we talk about deep levels of affordability for families across New York State, whether you're a tenant or pathways to home ownership, if you're a family of color, you start to see people come to all these different meetings, the council meetings, the legislative hearings, and you hear all the coded language around the tax base is going to be impacted, or we don't need any more of that type of housing here. Some of the folks that were part of the insurrection in DC on January 6th, people were being arrested from New York State. We see the resurgence or the budding for other places of white nationalist groups, right? And, definitely intimidating, at that time, intimidating voters where they were going just to go and exercise their rights. And even though we might not see the pickup trucks right now happening, the pickup trucks have now been replaced with people coming into the legislative chambers and pushing against the policies that we're fighting for, or we're seeing them actually run for office, right? And even when we're having conversations around bail reform, right? New York State have actually pushed some very progressive legislation around bail, right? Because we saw it clearly was a way of penalizing people for being poor. And there were a lot of very good messaging around why it should be rolled back. And we saw the governor, right, talk about why it should be rolled back, right? So we've been blessed to have it, as long as I've been at CVH, our training programs around organizing, right? Organizing 101 trainings, how do you cut an issue, how do you door knock, all of those things. And those are some of the most exciting opportunities to see members come in because to see a member transform from when they first came in to now being a part of this training and being able to use those skills in a campaign with other members as we're building something is life-changing, right? And being able to see just, Mrs. Jones, who was saying we need to be fighting for formerly incarcerated folks to have access to jobs, and having a campaign form from that, right, to lead to a win was huge. And another thing that we've been doing is that we launched our program called Follow Black Women. And so the initiative, right, was to survey Black women across New York State around issues that matter to us. And then to be able to take those issues and start to put together a policy agenda, right? But we know that it was just more than just the agenda that we wanted to have. We wanted to have Black women from all different walks of life to be able to say, we're in relationship with each other. These are the things that we care about. These are the things that we want others who are in decision-making power to care about, right? We're not a monolith. And the things that you think we care about, actually, this is what we really do care about. And so do something about it.